What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikiPikaPapa, and here we are with our monthly take on Sword and Shield, and we're going to be looking specifically at the top 20 singles cards from every single regular set in that era, and we are also going to be looking at all of the booster box prices from every regular set in that era. And we do this for Sword and Shield, we do this for Sun and Moon, we do it for Scarlet and Violet, and every other month I do it for XY as well, because who can't leave out XY, right? XY is an awesome era. We're seeing a lot of price movements in that space. It has been really, really interesting to keep a finger on the pulse of that era. And the reason we do all of this crazy data, I mean, look, it goes all the way back to September. I've been doing this for almost a year now. And the whole point of doing this is to help us keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on at a more macro level. We have been able to identify cards that are hitting support lines. We've been able to see when trends are starting to shift, right? We've been able to kind of be at the tip of the spear when it comes to identifying, macro level trends here in these different eras. And it has been really interesting to see how Sword and Shield will move one way, Scarlet and Violet will move another, and then Sun and Moon has been directionally flat for all of 2024. So if you haven't seen that video yet, wait until that one comes out in a couple days. It is really fascinating to see what's going on in the Sun and Moon space. So as I said, I do all of this information because I think it is just impactful to us in a bigger view. We can talk about individual cards, we can cherry pick individual sets, but seeing how things move at the macro level I think is very beneficial to all of us. So here we are coming up in August, right? And we will see that from July to August, the total value of the top 20 singles cards from all the sets that have booster boxes have come down 10%. Now, as I said, I've been doing this for almost a year now. So you can see all the way back in September of 2023, the total value for those top 20 singles cards from all 12 sets in Sword and Shield that have a booster box was $6,790. And then September to October, it was down 7.5%. October to November, it was down 2.75%, right? And then in December, we saw a little bit of an uptick, right? People were probably buying cards as Christmas gifts, so we saw the value come up 1%. And then January, February, we saw it be kind of flat, but down a little bit. And then we really started to see the singles cards get hot, right? We saw from February to March, the total value was up 1.69%. And then from March to April, it was up 6.77%. And that was where we started to see all kinds of indicators, and we were like, hey, listen, things are about to get a little saucy here in the Sword and Shield space. And then it certainly did. From April to May and May to June, prices just went through the roof. Look at that spike in that price graph. I mean, that is not healthy growth. That is not normal growth. That is a lot of awesome cards, a lot of booster boxes selling out, and people kind of FOMOing a little bit to get into these cards. Now, what we've seen over the last couple months is some retraction, and we expected that to happen. Now, it's interesting that, June to July, it was down, 9.38%. We'll round up and call it 10%. And then July to August, it was down 10.12%. So we'll round down and say 10%. So we're looking at pretty much over the last 2 months, it has dropped 10% each month. However, if you look at it all the way from September until August, so even with all of those ups and downs and lefts and rights along the way, if you had bought every single top 20 singles card in the Sword and Shield block in September of 2023, you would be up almost 20% still, which is really, really exciting. Now, I will say this, we're going to have to keep an eye on this, as we always do, to see if the trend continues. Are these cards going to continue to start losing some value? What we're looking for in this channel, and the reason we're doing this, is when we start to see it flatten out a little bit. And now once we see the era as a whole start to flatten out a little bit, maybe you missed out on some awesome chase cards from the Sword and Shield block. We all know that in the long run, they're going to do just fine. Alt arts are amazing. The Sword and Shield era is a very, very special era. So if we see it start to flatten out and you've missed some of these cards that you really want to have in your collection, maybe that'll be a time to take a look at them, because you'll know that at least from a macro level, we're kind of through the FOMO stage and we're starting to see prices normalize a little bit. So again, this is just on the top 20 singles cards, and on the slide right here, we're actually going to look at the booster boxes. Now, the booster boxes tell a very different story. However, you'll see that there has been some price constriction over the last 2 months. Now, you see all the way back in September of 2023, if you bought all of the booster boxes, one of all 12 booster boxes from the Sword and Shield block, that would have cost you $2,058. And then you'll see from September to October to November to December, the value of those booster boxes actually was dropping a little bit. And then from January, really all of 2024 up until the last couple months, it was gains on top of gains on top of gains. We've seen sets sell out at the Pokemon Center, which obviously drives a lot of price growth. We've seen Evolving Skies spike up. We've seen it come back down a little bit, and now it tends to be growing a little bit more. But the reality is, as we've seen with the top 20 singles cards kind of dropping a little bit after everybody piled in, even the booster boxes are down. Now they're down just a slight amount. I mean, we're talking about 2% down from June to July and less than 1% 1% down from July to August. And this kind of just highlights, you know, the stability that you have in the sealed space, right? These are only 12 products. These are 12 individual booster boxes. And if you bought all of them in September and you held all of them till now, you would be up 34.5%. I mean, think about it. The top 20 singles cards from 12 different sets, that's 240 different cards. You have to get a lot right to pick the winners of 240 different cards. And that wild ride of these spikes and these declines in the singles cards, I think this is just a really, really strong indicator of how cool it is to invest in the sealed space here in the Pokemon world. Now, we're going to look at individual sets. I'll highlight some individual cards. I'm going to give you my call outs for this month as I always do. But before I do that, if this type of video gets you excited, hit that subscribe button. We do a ton of work on this channel, and that little thing goes a long way in letting me know you appreciate all the work we do here in the back end of the PikiPikaPapa space. Now, and if you like it as well, give us a thumbs up, and if you have questions or comments, drop them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and let's get into these individual sets right now. So we start from newest to oldest. So we've got Silver Tempest and we've got Lost Origin, and I will tell you this, Lost Origin has been getting absolutely hammered as of late. But because Lost Origin was one of the newer, right, in the Sword and Shield block, right, it was the second to last regular series set that came out, it had a little bit less time to grow versus some of the older sets. Think about the Chilling Reign, think about the Evolving Skies, right? Like they had more time to grow before we went through this massive market spike, which affected almost all of the Sword and Shield block, and then the subsequent retraction that we've seen over the last 2 months. So I'm looking at some of these Lost Origin cards, and I'm wondering if they're a little bit oversold. Is the broader market overselling because the fact that all of Sword and Shield is in the middle of a sell cycle right now? Those are the things that I look for, at least when I'm thinking about investing. You look at Lost Origin, you know, you got the Giratina there at the top, right? And you've got some really awesome, you know, it's a Pikachu set. It's got some really cool Pikachu cards in it. So I think there's a lot of momentum there. Now, Silver Tempest is one where I'm trying to figure out where I stand on the overall card list on there. Obviously, the Lugia is absolute fire. Then you got a Ray, which is coming in right behind it. But outside of that, I'm not sure how I feel, right? You got the Regidrago in there, which is your alt art. You got Unknown in there, which is your alt art. And outside of that, not a lot that I get overly excited about in the Silver Tempest space. So I'm not sure how I feel. I would love for you guys to let me know down below. You know, we think about some of the biggest sets in the Sword and Shield block. Obviously, I call it the Big Seven, which is basically from Chilling Reign forward. You know, where does Silver Tempest stack up in that Big Seven? Not all can be a top 3. Not all can be a top 4 set. And when I'm thinking about how I'm going to invest, at least in the Sword and Shield era moving forward, you know, where is that money going to be better spent? So one of the interesting things that I thought was worth calling out was, speaking of Lost Origin, you know, the number 2 card, this Aerodactyl card right here, it has really been getting beaten up as of late. And you'll see right there, it shows that over the last month, it is down 26% versus that Giratina at the top, which is only down 7%. Now, as you'll see throughout the course of this video, the highest of the high, the biggest of the baddest cards in these sets have a tendency to hold on to their value a little bit more, especially during market volatility. But this is a really cool card. And again, it's down 4% from where it was 1 year ago. It is down 4% compared to where it was in August of 2023. So you can actually buy this not at a 1-year low, but at least at a discount compared to where it was a year ago. A really awesome card from what I think is going to be a really great set in Lost Origin, and you're getting it in the sub $100 range right now. So I do think that we're going to start to, maybe not this month, I'm going to wait another month and see where things start to flatten out, hopefully, but I do think we're going to start seeing some interesting opportunities here in the Sword and Shield space relatively soon, and this Aerodactyl could be one of them. Next 2 sets right here, Astral Radiance and Brilliant Stars, and every month when I do this, I get new tidbits of information about Astral Radiance, and I'm very transparent. Astral Radiance was flying under my radar for a long time. I think a lot of us were surprised with the fact that Astral Radiance sold out relatively quickly, comparatively, you know, where Astral Radiance sold out, I think, before Brilliant Stars and certainly before Silver Tempest, which is still in stock at the Pokemon Center. But Brilliant Stars has had a rough go of things. I mean, if you look, that Charizard just got absolutely hammered. And also the Rainbow Charizard in there too. I mean, the top 2 cards are Charizards. One's the alt art, one's that Secret Rainbow. And both of them are just getting flatlined right now. I mean, the one's down 23% and the Rainbow Zard is now down below $50. But when you look at Astral Radiance, it's interesting because Astral Radiance actually has a more valuable chase card now than Brilliant Stars. And when you average out the top 20 cards in Astral Radiance, it's a higher dollar amount than Brilliant Stars. When you average out the top 5 cards, it's more valuable than Brilliant Stars. And then when you look at from a booster box price, the booster box price in Astral Radiance actually has come down month over month. It's down below the 170 mark, and you get Brilliant Stars, which is up above 181. So I'm always trying to figure out, is Astral Radiance being overlooked a little bit here? Like, is Astral Radiance going to be a sneaky great set to hold, you know, in the long run? I know it's not, you know, headlined by a you know, Umbreon type card or by a Charizard type card. But overall, I think this set is really deep. I think it has some amazing artwork to it. And when I think about how deep the set is, you look at this right here. I mean, this is not a huge name Pokemon by any means, but the artwork on this is absolutely stunning. And then when you look at where it has been over the last year, again, this is up almost 28% versus where it started off earlier in the year. Now, we saw the market react when all the big alt art started to sell out and sell for crazy high prices. A lot of the lower ones did too, but this one has actually been able to hold on to some of its value. And I think that's going to be the key. It had a low jumping off point, right about $16, $17. Now it's all the way up to $26, and it seems to be flattening it out. It seems to be holding that price point. So I'm interested to see where Astral Radiance shakes out in the long run, but it is something that I keep thinking about because I feel like it might be one of those sneaky great sets that we just don't realize until we're further on down the road. The next two sets right here, what I consider to be the two best sets of the whole Sword and Shield block. I know people will fight me over Fusion Strike, but I personally love it. I'm a huge Gengar fan. And then, of course, you got Evolving Skies. And as I said earlier, you know, the big chase cards from the big sets, they tend to hold their value better than others. So you'll see the Moonbreon is only down 3% month over month. And if you look at Evolving Skies from top to bottom, it really is a bloodbath there. Now, most months where we have seen regression in all of these sets, Evolving Skies has been the one gold star. It's held on better than the rest. So I think it's just finding a later term to normalize a little bit, and none of that, I'm not concerned. Evolving Skies is going to be fan-freaking-tastic, right? There's no question about that. Booster boxes will be at $1,000 at some point, if not more. You know, the Moonbreon is the Moonbreon, and the rest of the alt arts are going to perform really, really well as well. The other thing that I thought was interesting, when we talk about the top cards that you invest in, the big ones, why it's great to invest in high-quality, high-demand cards, you look at Fusion Strike, and last month when we did this video, the Gengar and the Espeon were really close in terms of price, and I remember scratching my head. I was like, man, this just doesn't make a ton of sense. Is the Gengar going to shoot up, or is the Espeon going to drop down? Like, what's going to happen? Because I don't think Fusion Strike is in the space where it's going to have $200-300 cards. Well, we see that the Espeon is now down 20% from last month to this month. And when you look at the Gengar, I mean, it's pretty much flat, right? It's down 1% from last month to this month. It's holding right above $300. You know, that might be a support line for that Gengar moving forward. It might just hold at the $300 mark. And it's just really interesting. The other thing is I talked about, I didn't think Fusion Strike could have two cards, excuse me, over the $300 mark. I'm interested to keep an eye on Evolving Skies and see how many cards over that $200 mark it's going to have in the long run. Now, if you're wondering, hey, that's crazy, Evolving Skies is huge, it's going to have 4, 5, 6 cards over $200 in the long run, maybe it will. I don't know. I just know that when I do this video series, when I look at sets like Team Up, when I look at sets like Cosmic Eclipse, right, I look at some of these big sets from the Sun and Moon era, they don't have a lot of cards over $200. A raw card price of $200 is rare air in the Pokemon space, and you see that in Evolving Skies, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4 over that mark right now, and another one at $195. So it's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Evolving Skies is going to do what it's going to do, but when I'm thinking about, you know, do I really want to be going out and buying any of these alt art cards right now? Absolutely not. I think they've got some time to normalize. I think we're going to find a new floor here relatively soon, so that's something to keep an eye on. Now, Fusion Strike, as I told you, it's one of my favorite sets, and I wanted to highlight a card that isn't at the very top of these lists, but I have talked about before. I love this Mew V from Fusion Strike, and this little booger right here has performed really well for me. I told you guys, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago that I love the artwork on this, that I thought this card was going to have broad, you know, appeal to people further down the road, and it's held on pretty well, you know, and not a huge gainer right there. I think you can get it back then in the $20, $30 range, and now it's a $40 card, and obviously it's done what most of them have done. It's been coming down a little bit in price, but I love seeing cards like this. Awesome artwork from an amazing set. Seems to be holding on pretty well. We'll have to wait another couple months and see, you know, if the bottom falls out, but I love having cards like this on the list because they're not talked about a lot, but they still have an awesome opportunity if you can identify them early on to give you some recent returns. Now, the next one we're going to talk about right here, Chilling Reign in Battle Styles, and Chilling Reign is an absolute beast of a set. Outside of Evolving Skies, I mean, Chilling Reign is just the set that I sit back and I'm kind of in awe of, and it's got 8 cards that are over the $50 mark. Even with this, all the turmoil that's going on, it still has 8 cards that have held on, and if you look at that number 9 card, it's at $49.53. Now, Chilling Reign is not immune to the market correction, just like Evolving Skies wasn't, so you'll see top to bottom overall, it's down 13%, but even with that huge drop that we've seen over the last 2 months, it still has 8 cards over 50, and that 9th is knocking on the door. Battle Styles is a set that, I don't know, I mean, there can only be so many top tier sets in an era, and Battle Styles obviously has alt arts. It's got some sneaky good art in there, but it's going to be interesting for me to see when these other big sets, when the Lost Origins, when the Brilliant Stars, when the Astral Radiance, the Chilling Reign, right, Evolving Skies, like when all of these start to kind of get their floor settled in, where does Battle Styles flush out at? And as you can see, the booster box, Chilling Reign booster box was flat month over month, but the Battle Styles booster box actually came down a little bit. That box is still below MSRP. So I'll tell you right now, the market doesn't have a whole lot of faith in Battle Styles long term. Now, Chilling Reign had some interesting cards in it, and it has another card that we've highlighted in the past on this video, which is dropping like a rock right now. But what I want to talk about for this card is this Zapdos from Chilling Reign, okay? The interesting thing, and the reason we highlighted it many moons ago on this channel, was if you see really from August of 23 all the way through January, February, March of 2024, it had a very solid bottom, right? The market supported this card at $40 come heck or high water, right? This card was a $40 card, hard stop. However, then when we saw the rest of the market really spike up, this card spiked up, and now this card is dropping really hard. So what's going to be interesting to me is, will it find a floor above the $40 mark? That's what I look for in a lot of these cards. You are going to see these spikes and these regressions. It's going to happen in eras. It's going to happen in cycles. Like, it's just part of the Pokemon collecting space. But what I want to learn from cards like this is that new floor going to be higher than the old floor? And if it is, how much more? That's the lesson we're going to learn, and that's what we're going to look for. Now, Zapdos, we do a grading video on this channel every single month. Zapdos is one of the most popular Pokemon, not just in the Pokemon space, but one of the most characters in the entire TCG space. It is always one of the most graded characters in the TCG space at PSA as a whole. So really interested to watch how this card performs and to see if it does set a new bottom and if it's above that $40 mark or below. The next ones we're looking at right here, I'm going to be honest with you, the final four aren't that exciting, but even when they're not that exciting, I think we have tons of lessons that we can learn, and we're certainly going to learn some lessons here from Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze. Now, of course, I got to call out, the Rainbow Chunkachu from Vivid Voltage that you all know I love so much. It is down 5%. It has been able to hold on to a lot of those gains. We talked about it a couple months ago. It kind of bottomed out at $100, and I said, this is a $100 card, hard stop. Like, I feel like the market won't let this go much below $100, so if you want it, this might be a decent time to get in. We've seen it spike up. Now we're starting to see it come down. So another card where I'm interested to see if it can just hold that line at the $100 mark. The poor Charizard from Darkness Ablaze, printed into the ground. I mean, it is 54 cents away from being a $20 or below card, which is absolutely insane. But what the big takeaway for me on this was, look at the Elite Trainer Box prices for Vivid Voltage and Darkness Ablaze. The Elite Trainer Box prices are actually up month over month, which is interesting because Darkness Ablaze is still available on the Pokemon Center. Now, why you would buy it on the Pokemon Center for MSRP when you can buy it on the secondary market at a substantial discount doesn't make any sense. So that goes to show you that why this price is actually up. But we've talked about Elite Trainer Boxes in the past, and there have been some very strong opinions about the collectability and invincibility of Elite Trainer Boxes. I'm a big believer in the Pokemon Center exclusive ones with the stamp promos. I think they're super rare. They sell out really quickly. But there were conversations about these Sword and Shield era ones as well, and I thought this was a cool thing to look at. So this is the Vivid Voltage Elite Trainer Box 1-year graph, and this is the Vivid Voltage Booster Box 1-year graph. And guess what? The Vivid Voltage Elite Trainer Box is actually up almost 16% over the last year. Now, most of that came in the last couple weeks or the last month, if you will. And the Vivid Voltage Booster Box is actually down 3.78%. Now, I am in no way, shape, or form endorsing or saying you should invest in Sword and Shield booster boxes or not invest in Sword and Shield booster boxes and instead invest in Elite Trainer Boxes. Obviously, Sword and Shield block, I am all in on booster boxes, not ETBs. But I just thought this was an interesting comparison because a lot of times your opportunity for growth comes from your entry point. If you were able to buy these Vivid Voltage Elite Trainer Boxes at, I don't know, 20 bucks, 25 bucks, $29 when everybody was super bearish on them. I mean, you can see in November of 2023, they dropped all the way to $30 a box. Like, that is a great entry point for this type of product to keep it sealed. And in 10, 15, 20 years down the road, however long your time frame is, you're going to have a solid rate of return. A lot of these products, it all depends on what your entry point is. Now, I can't imagine having to store these big clunky things for 20 years, but it's worth talking about, and I certainly thought these was a cool comparison. Our final two sets right here, we got Rebel Clash in Sword and Shield and Boss's Order at the top of Rebel Clash. Can't hang on to it. It has dropped below the $40 mark. And in Sword and Shield, we've got a Bloodbath at the top. You got the Secret Snorlax. You know, it has been a strong grower. Remember, Marnie used to be the chase card in Sword and Shield. Then we saw that Snorlax pop up, and it is flattening out a little bit. So it's down about 7%, but I'll show you the graph here in a minute. It's actually performed relatively well. But you know, I'm just trying to figure out the bottom for these four sets. I really am. There is going to be a bottom four sets in Scarlet and Violet. I don't know what they are, but I think that it'll be interesting to see how these sets from such a hyped era like Sword and Shield perform and where they kind of bottom out at, because it'll give us some idea of what might happen in Scarlet and Violet. Now, I think Scarlet and Violet has hit a lot of home runs early on. I think there's a lot of really cool illustration rares. I did a video about how the gem rates are really low, which is going to make PSA 10s really rare for these early sets, and I think that's going to help drive some collectability. So we may not see any Scarlet and Violet set hit these singles cards prices so low, although Obsidian Flames is trying to work its way down and Paradox Rift certainly is working its way down too. Scarlet and Violet base is certainly working its way down, so maybe we will see a bottom four that's similar, but I do think that there are some interesting takeaways from this, and as I said, I've got to show you this. These are the booster boxes, okay? We talk about sealed investing a lot on this channel, and we've seen the bottom from all of these singles cards. We've seen how the first four sets, they really have not performed well from a singles card perspective. But look at the booster boxes from Sword and Shield and Rebel Clash. Now remember, these were pre-pandemic, which had pre-pandemic print runs. After the pandemic, a lot of people flooded into Pokemon. The production numbers were much higher. So we'll just have to see. But I will say, look, even though the singles cards, we got cards that are below $40 is the chase card for Rebel Clash. We've got the Snorlax at the top of Scarlet and Violet base. The Marnie has fallen all the way. But even with all of that commotion, we still have some booster boxes that have performed really well. So again, hard to argue against sealed collecting here in the Pokemon space. Listen, that is it. I've got Sun and Moon on the horizon. I've got Scarlet and Violet on the horizon. We have tons of fun stuff to talk about. So if you enjoyed this video and you made it to the end, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you more than I can say. Have a great one, everybody. See you.